Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's edition of Advanced Bass Fishing, and really appreciate you guys joining me for today's video. And we're going to be talking about how to catch bass in rising muddy water, or maybe a little bit just about muddy water in general. But one of the reasons I wanted to do this video is in the springtime of the year, between March and May, this is the time of year that we get some big rains, and lakes can muddy up real quick, lakes can rise real quick. And it can be really challenging. It can provide opportunities as well. But I sort of want to give you guys some of my experiences, what I found about dealing with a situation like that, and I think it'll give you a lot more confidence next time it happens. Because I can tell you right now, guys, if you're fishing, say you go fishing and everything's normal, and you're catching some fish and you're doing pretty good, and then all of a sudden, the next time you go, the next 2 or 3 days or next week after that, the lake's coming up and it's muddy. It can kill your confidence if you don't know how to approach this. So we're going to get into that in today's episode. Also, guys, before we get started, just a couple quick things to remind you about. Just want to let everybody know about my on-the-water lessons that I offer. If you guys are interested in that, just shoot me a private message on my Facebook page, Randy Blaukat Professional Angler, and I'll give you the details on that. And also, guys, please check out my Fish the Moment lake map breakdowns. We have our spring maps on the site now. These are maps I build for fishthemoment.com that gives you 40 GPS waypoints and tips and advice on how to fish each one of them. You can download to your fish finder. So I'll put the lake map breakdown link in the description there too. I really appreciate that. Okay, even for a pro, guys, when you have a change and you have rising dirty water coming into the lake, it's intimidating to anybody. Don't feel like you're all alone if you lose confidence or you don't really know what to do, because it can be difficult. And there's so many different scenarios in a lake that can actually really hurt the fishing, or can help the fishing, or sometimes you just have to make minor adjustments. So I sort of want to go over what those situations are, and we're going to keep this in a springtime situation. So we're talking about conditions where the water temperatures are normally above 50 or 55 degrees, which in this time of year, you're starting to approach 50-degree water in most parts of the country, or within the next 3 or 4 weeks, you're going to be there. So, pretty much relegate this conversation to March, April, May is going to be the time frame for it. Now, here's the thing about it as far as how this affects bass and how it has some type of an effect on it. A lot of it has to do with the intensity of the rain that you've had leading up to this rise. If you've had one of those just heavy rains, almost where everything's flooding out, and there's like flash flood warnings around where you're at, this can be pretty difficult to catch fish afterwards in most lakes. Now, there are some, let me talk about, the opportunities, and I'll talk about the drawbacks, and then we'll talk about different scenarios, different, levels of rise. If you have one of those situations where the lake's coming up pretty hard and it's dirty and it's happening real fast, in a clear water lake, this can actually be really, really good, because a lot of times what happens is these fish in clear water, they suspend a lot and they're deeper, but when they sense that lake rising and they sense that lake, the water getting dirty, they automatically move shallower. And it can provide some really good opportunities. So if you're in a lake that has over 4 foot of clarity in it, water visibility, and you get a heavy rain and it's bringing a lot of dirty water into the creeks, guys, get back up there in those creeks and get back up in there in those areas where that muddy water's coming in, or the dirty water, and throw you a jig and a spinnerbait. Jig, spinnerbait, chatterbait, fish right up on the bank. Try to find the areas where the water's running in. Like if you're in the back of the cove and you see water running in, go back there and throw those 3 lures around that dirty incoming water. Now, the what I call dirty is all relative, because there's a difference between mud and dirty water. If you have mud coming in where you don't have any water visibility, like it's an inch visibility, it's going to be tough to catch one. That's not what we're talking about. But if you have dirty water coming in, say, for example, you've got normally 3 or 4 foot of clarity where you fish at, and then the dirty water comes in and it reduces your visibility to maybe 4, 5, 6 inches, maybe something like that, that's perfect. As long as you've got 4 or 5 inches of water visibility, that's enough for those fish to see, and it's enough for them to still want to bite, and that can actually really, really help a lake. It can really help things out a lot if you have that particular type of a situation. Now, if you've got a more off-colored lake, say for example, if the water visibility is normally a little bit dirtier, say your water visibility is normally a foot to 2 foot visibility, the impact that rising muddy water has on that, it doesn't really give you as many opportunities. In a situation like that, it's always going to put the fish shallower anytime that you have a situation like that. So that's the first thing to remember. And the next thing to remember is on any rise like that, you've got two options. You can either fish the steep banks where that rise is more vertical, or you can fish the flat banks where when the water rises, it floods out vast areas of flat areas. And that's the two different scenarios. Now, a lot of lakes, you'll have both of that. You'll have some areas where the flats flood way out into, and you get flooded trees and flooded bushes to fish. And then you've got other areas where if it's a steep rocky bank or a bluff that comes up, both of them can be good. If you have a situation where it's a really radical rise and the water's really dirty, I catch them a lot better on the steep stuff. Those fish will not move back into that flooded stuff that quick if it comes up fast and it's dirty. So if you get one of those toad stranglers and the water's dirty coming up, try getting on your steep rocky banks, your bluff banks, your riprap banks, because those fish, all they're doing is moving up and down, and they just move closer to the bank. Now, if you're on a flat, those fish could be anywhere out there. Sometimes when a flat floods out, it may flood back hundreds of yards back into some farmer's field or something, and the fish are really scattered out. Now, if the water comes up on those flats, the water really needs to be up in there for several days before those fish will move up into it in that muddy water. So if we have the quick rise and it's dirty and you're getting some flooded cover, shallow like that, you're not going to catch many up until 3 or 4 or 5 days after. And eventually, if that water stabilizes and starts to slowly fall down, and all the sediment and particles start to settle down a little bit, and you get you get a little bit of visibility to the water, that's a great time to go in there flipping a jig or flipping a creature bait or throwing a spinner bait around that shallow cover. That's some of my favorite ways to catch fish. And also, guys, when you have rising muddy water like that, sometimes you want to take advantage of that dirty water, but sometimes they just don't bite very well in it. And if you have a rising lake like that, a lot of times it's better to go down the lake and try to find the cleanest water that you can, even though the water's coming up, and that's a little bit more conducive. Now, another thing you will find out about rising muddy water is if you have a really fast rise where it comes up real quick, those fish, like I said, will not move up into that good-looking flooded cover right off the bat. And if they do, they're usually small fish. On a fast rise, most of the quality bass like to stay on the old shoreline. In other words, say for example, your normal lake level is 800. If the water comes up 5 or 6 feet, those fish will stay at that 800 level. They won't move up to the 806 into the flooded stuff. They hang down there on that old shoreline because it's a lot more stable environment for them. Now, eventually, if the weather stabilizes out, the water cleans up a little bit, and you do have some type of a steady water level, or maybe even slightly rising or slightly falling, those fish eventually will filter up in there, and you can catch those fish out of the flooded stuff. But the main thing, guys, to remember on muddy water rise, move shallow, less than 3 foot deep. That's the best thing. 2 to 3 foot deep is going to be your zone. And throw baits that displace a lot of water, like your bigger spinner baits, your jigs, square bill crankbaits, chatterbaits, something that has a vibration where those fish can really hone in on that noise. So anyway, hope it helps you guys out, and we'll talk later.